Welcome to Skip the Queue, a podcast for people working in and working with visitor attractions. I'm your host, Paul Martin. For many regional attractions, the head of marketing is a one-person marketing machine expected to be all over digital, email, social and out-of-home advertising. In today's episode, we're joined by Anita Waddell and Liz Dimes from Agility Marketing, who'll be sharing insights from their Attraction Marketing Academy to help power up your marketing in 2025. After starting her career in attractions marketing at London Zoo, Anita has run Agility Marketing for over 20 years, working with clients like Camel Creek and Blackgate Chine. And Liz is the expert behind Agility Marketing's digital advertising and conversion optimization strategies, having found her love for visitor attractions when joining Agility in 2017. Liz, Anita, welcome to Skip the Queue.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
So this is not our first episode of the new year, but it's the first episode we're recording in the new year. And as I was saying before we started, my rule is that I can still say Happy New Year up until the end of January, as long as it's the first time I've said Happy New Year to somebody. So Happy New Year to both of you.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
So we, as you know, we always get started with an icebreaker question. So I've got a couple of little icebreakers for you, and they are topical, relevant to where we are right now. So I'm going to go with Liz. Which is better, Christmas Day or New Year's Day?
Christmas Day. Oh. Although I must admit, I prefer the run up to Christmas than the actual day.
Oh, okay. So it's the excitement of going out and doing all the prep and the present wrapping and,
Christmas trees, pretty lights, shiny things, excitement. But yes, I think I'd definitely choose Christmas Day over New Year's Day.
Oh, it's funny, isn't it? Because there's a real split. I'm definitely Christmas, much more Christmas than New Year's. I'm quite happy on New Year's to be sat watching Hootenanny on telly rather than going out and doing a big go out and party with lots of people. But
absolutely, I agree.
Of my age, but there we go. Anita, do you chuck all the Christmas decorations and the lights into a box and throw it into the loft, or are you Miss Neat and everything is neatly folded and packaged away, ready for future Anita to thank you and be able to do everything easily next year?
I would love to say I was the latter. But having done that on Sunday, I think it's more about getting them out of the way in a box and deal with the problem next year. I aspire to be the neat queen, but unfortunately, it's just time takes its toll, and it's a matter of getting the job done.
There's a real spread in our house. Mrs. Marden is tidy it away as fast as you can. I will sit there literally for hours straightening all of the lights out and making sure that it's right. And then next year you can figure out who was responsible for the packing away, because you can just see it straight in front of you.
John, I saw a recommendation the other day, actually, that you should put sort of £20 or something in with your Christmas decorations. So when you get them out next year, you can buy yourself a takeaway while you're sorting them out from last year's you. I didn't do it, but I thought that was a brilliant idea.
So I came back to work on Monday and all the stuff from the office was all packed away, and I went to put it in the storage locker, and we share our storage with the building owners, and I just found the Christmas tree stuck in the cupboard, fully decorated, and I think, is that really putting the decorations, is that really taking it down? Have you broken the walls? Or is that really a cunning plan?
That's one way of doing with it, isn't it? Definitely.
Exactly. Look, we have got lots to talk about. But first, tell me about yourselves and tell me about your background. Anita, tell me a little bit about you.
I suppose visitor attractions has always been my thing. Ever since my first marketing job, which was at London Zoo many years ago, I caught the bug really. But I suppose I was at London Zoo. I was they weren't in a strong financial situation, so there was actually a recruitment van. So I was a young aspiring marketeer who joined the company, and as everybody who was experienced and worried about their own career path left, I just absorbed their role. So over the space of 3 years, I had a huge amount of experience, and from there then left to become a marketing manager of a much smaller attraction, and having doubled their numbers from up to over 200,000 over a year, I suddenly thought, hold on a minute, this is really fun industry and something that's actually I can do. So from there I went on and ended up working for an agency myself, who were specialists in visitor attractions. And then 20 years ago, I thought, well, hold on a minute. Maybe I should try this for myself. Maybe I can have my own agency. I thought, what's the worst that can happen? I just have to go back and do the day job again. So I started it, and over those years, more people have joined me. I've got 3 cracking directors, really good senior leadership team, and Agility now is a visitor attraction marketing agency.
Amazing. How about you, Liz? How did you get into this industry?
Well, I started in a very different industry. I started in automotive. I started doing more PR than marketing, definitely. But it just wasn't, I enjoyed it a lot, and I learned a lot about cars, but it wasn't really my passion. So I sort of left and thought, I'm going to try something else. I was more interested in learning about the digital marketing, as that was really starting to kick off in the world at that point. Mm-hmm. So I got a digital marketing role at a business school, which was near to where I live, which is very different. And I really started to get the bug for the digital marketing aspect, and just enjoyed learning more and more about that. But the whole sort of B2B business school side, little bit dull for me, if I'm totally honest. And actually that business all got sold to another one. So I was made redundant at that point. So it gave me a little bit of a chance to sort of sit back and go, right, what do I actually want to do? And digital marketing was definitely the thing, particularly sort of paid advertising for me. And that's when I found Anita and Agility Marketing, and they happened to have the perfect role for me. And that was in 2017. And then just loved the industry very, very quickly from joining, and sort of have no intention of ever leaving it, to be honest.
It is super fun, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's fun doing the marketing thing that we do in this particular space, because it's all about helping people to enjoy themselves. So
yeah, absolutely. And families. And I've got a 5-year-old, so I'm really in that moment at the moment. I'm my own target audience at the moment, which is always nice.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that Agility has recently done is set up the Attraction Marketing Academy. And I think today we're going to not talk about that, but we're going to talk about some of the stuff that you cover in that academy. So why don't we just start by telling listeners a little potted understanding of what the academy actually is?
Yes. Shall I take that one, Liz?
Yes.
So I mean, the academy is what it says on the tin. It's a marketing academy for visitor attractions. And it actually, where it came from was out of COVID. Some obviously don't want to go back to COVID ever again. But during that time, everyone was in survival mode, and they really shared, they collaborated, they did everything they could to work with each other. And once, life got back to normal a bit more, that collaboration stopped. There wasn't the need for it. But we really enjoyed sharing all of our knowledge and expertise during that time. So the academy has really been born to allow us to continue to do that. So it is a visitor attraction masterclass, I suppose. So we have pre-recorded content. We have fresh content through live sessions monthly. We have Ask Me Anything clinics, so our members can jump on board and say, look, actually we had a brilliant Ask Me Anything clinic in December, where we were talking about events for one particular member for the forthcoming year, and there were loads of fresh ideas that came out of that for her. So it is really providing that mentoring, but also that detailed knowledge and expertise, which all attractions, if you're a one-man band, you don't necessarily have. You're having to be jack of all trades. So we're a helping hand, really.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it, that many of the attractions that we deal with are massively well-known brands, but actually, when you look at the team behind it, they are more like a small business or small to medium-sized business. They often don't have massive teams, even though their brand has massive recognition. Yeah, and you can often be quite surprised, can't you, that it is this kind of one-person marketing machine at the centre of what is a really well-known brand. It's quite surprising sometimes, and I think the more we can do to support those people, the better, really. So, why don't we delve a little bit into some of the stuff that the academy covers, and then we can talk a little bit about some of the ways that marketers can help improve their outcomes for this year ahead. So I think one place to start is always about benchmarking, isn't it? And this is something that at Rubber Cheese we find really interesting, and we care a lot about with our Rubber Cheese survey. But I think benchmarking and understanding where you are against the competition is not competition, against the rest of the sector, I should say, is really important because you can understand what good and bad is, can't you? And this is something that you guys care quite a lot about as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's really at the heart of everything we do for our clients. We benchmark with the industry. That's the brilliance really for us of working solely in the visitor attraction industry. We can really see what's the good, bad and ugly of all things marketing within that industry. So we recommend that you'd benchmark everything really. But obviously it depends on what you're doing. So you'd benchmark your socials, your emails, your website performance, your reviews, your paid advertising results, just anything that you collect data on for you. If you don't know whether that's good or bad, how do you know what you're looking at really with your data? So you might see that this year you were 2% up on your last year's results and think, great. But if everyone else is 10% up, then actually maybe there's something key in there that you're missing that would really be a quick fix for you to do. And without knowing that, it's impossible to do that. The majority of the benchmarking we do is digital advertising because it's 70% of our work for our clients. But as I say, we do benchmark across everything. And by benchmarking, we know that we can ensure that we're optimizing well to make sure that we're achieving the best results possible for all our clients. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. And that's what we all do.
Absolutely.
I'm going to push this over to Anita a little bit, but it's because benchmarking is such a key thing for us. We've actually got a new initiative we're announcing now in January. So I'm going to let Anita do that.
Oh, yeah, no, drum roll.
Okay. Okay. So this, to be honest, the inspiration of this came from Rubber Cheese and your website benchmarking for the visitor attraction sector. And we benchmark all the time, but actually we know that we work with 15 to 20 attractions across the year, but the attraction sector is so much bigger. And what we wanted to do was launch an industry-wide survey on digital advertising. So people can identify how big their budget should actually be for digital advertising, what performance, what click-through rate, what cost per acquisition, what cost per click is actually good and average across all of the platforms. For example, we know in our business, a lot of our clients will use the Google search, Google Performance Match, Meta, TikTok. But we also know that when we start working with some attractions, they're only using Meta or they're only using Facebook. And so it's really just taking a broad brush of the sector to actually understand what is happening out there across, whether it be theme parks, whether it be a heritage attraction, whether they're a zoo, just a broad brush to really give something back to the sector like you've done with Rubber Cheese, really.
I think it's so important, isn't it? Because paid advertising can be a bit scary for some people because it feels a little bit like you're gambling, or it feels like a fruit machine. But I always think that it's a fruit machine where you can figure out the odds. And once you figure out the odds, you just have to decide how much money you can pump into the top of it. And magically at the bottom, money comes out in relation to the odds that you've calculated. But if you benchmark that across the sector...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the beauty of digital advertising is that there is a system and a process to it. So that you've got to get people to your website. You've got from the website, you need to get them to your landing page. At every stage of the journey, coming back to benchmarking, you can identify what is working well and what actually can be tweaked to optimize it even further. And we've got clients now after COVID. There was when we focused purely on, well, actually, to be honest, during COVID, there wasn't a lot of marketing going on at all because people were so desperate to get out. The organic social and email marketing could cope with it. But then people came back and they started to do a lot more out of home. But now we're finding clients are actually saying this year in particular, with the increased cost in the budget, sure, we know we get a lot from digital advertising. Shall we actually reduce our out-of-home budget and put more into digital advertising because it's more measurable and it's more, that confidence can be given.
We've all only got limited budgets, and it's all about deciding where the best place to spend your money is. We'll come back to this benchmarking point a little bit later, I think, because I think it's really important. But let's dive into some of the channels that marketers can use and talk about some tips and tricks across each of the channels, maybe. Should we start with social? Is it important to top attractions? I think you've already answered that, but how important, I guess?
I think it's very important. I think we all know that that's where people spend their time at the moment, depending on who because in general, as a sort of blanket, a lot of the target audience for all attractions is very similar. But depending on where you are you a tourist destination? Are you more of a regional destination? Are you a heritage site? Are you a zoo? It will depend. So, but most of those audiences are spending a lot of their time on socials. But because of that, and because everyone knows that, their concentration is much less, your competition is much higher, but you got to be there. If you're not there, you're not in with a chance. So it's incredibly important. And I think it's about what should your focus be? So actually, if you are a one-man band and you have a certain amount of hours in the day to do it, what are you going to focus on? Maybe pick 2 or 3. So if you are going to pick 2 or 3, I think at the moment you would pick Instagram, TikTok and Facebook. Still, I know we all think Facebook is disappearing, but the grandparents take their grandchildren on these days out.
Exactly. And that landscape of the different social platforms was stable for a very long time, wasn't it? But it's changing quite a lot. So should you be on Twitter? Is it a scary place to be now? Should you be on Blue Sky? But you're saying TikTok, still Facebook, Instagram, those are the key places that you should be focusing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you've got extra time, if you have extra resource, then absolutely test those extra platforms out and see where you've got. But actually, if your time is limited, then focus on doing the best for the top platforms of where your audience are. And at the moment, we believe, and all the data believes, for our audiences, it's Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Yeah, and what are the basics that you've got to be covering there? What should they be posting about to be able to kind of meet the bar?
I feel the key with social media is that it's got to convey a message that is going to provide overall reason to visit. So you need to get your planning right. And so, yes, you want to have different formats, but you want to make the posts are not wallpaper posts, and you want to make sure that the post you're saying are said, the same message is said in 3 or 4 different ways. But ultimately, you're trying to stimulate an action, and whether that's just engagement at this stage, people aren't necessarily going to visit immediately after seeing a post, but if they engage, they then see more posts, and over time, when they do want that day out, you'll be in their top of mind. So I think the key we always say is make sure you get your planning right. Your commercial messages in January are going to be totally different to your commercial messages in summer or Easter. When in January you might be thinking, well, we need a volume driver promotion because people haven't got any money. We want season passes are always sold in the first few months of the year, so you want to make sure you've got some promotion. You've got your season pass messaging out there. So it is make sure you've got your planning and messages right, and from there you can then be creative as you like, but you've got to make sure that you're saying the right thing.
So let's follow that thought. What are the special little sprinkles that people could do this year to really energise their social media? What is it that they can do to inject that creativity?
I think different formats. I think you can say the same thing over different formats to really make them zing.
I think one of the things we're really seeing good trends on, and again, this does depend on who you have in your team, but if you've got a member in your team who is willing to be on camera and is entertaining, is witty, can be a bit different. There's a few attractions that are doing this really, really well already, but if there's something about, so we all talk about user-generated content, and absolutely you should be sharing user-generated content. You should be making your most of your micro-influencers and all that kind of thing. But actually there's sort of EGC, which is employee-generated content as well. And I think a bit of behind the scenes is still works well, a bit of witty content from someone. And if you've got the right person who's willing to do it and has the great personality and is happy to be on screen, then please take advantage of that person, really. Please use them, because also they'll probably really enjoy it. I mean, there's a number of attractions where I know, because we've spoken to them, where they're sort of a bit famous. So that person, completely. People go round, and they spot them and they want to go and say hi to that person. And if it's the right person who's comfortable with that, they really enjoy that.
Yep,
so if you've got that person, go for it. It's a real trend at the moment that's working well.
Okay, let's move channels then. Let's talk about email marketing, because interestingly, in the Rubber Cheese survey this year, the data that we had showed that this was the weakest source of leads for attractions. Now, as I always say when I talk about our data, there's statistics involved, and what we know is about the data set that is in front of us. It's not always completely reflective of the entire sector. So is that illustrative of what you guys see as well? Or is it more effective than that for you?
I think I would say that we measure our email marketing. We put UTM codes on all of our links, so we can actually track effectively. I would probably say they're not seeing it either because they're not tracking it effectively. And UTM codes are so easy to set up
completely.
these days. Or they're not, at the end of the day, the emails is a channel of communication. So if your email says exactly the same thing every single month, you just need to, with your programming, and I think programming is going to be such a big thing, continue to be such a big thing this year. You need to really stimulate that repeat business, give people a reason to revisit it. Your email marketing needs to be saying something different every single time. Otherwise people will just get bored with it. So I would say it's those two things.
Yeah, so it's all about keeping the faith. It is a valuable channel. You should focus on it, but you need to be able to have all of the tracking in place so that you can attribute the leads to that source, and then a decent story to tell that's going to engage people.
The only other thing I would say is that, I think most people have got their heads around this now, but GDPR, when it came out, everyone was terrified of not getting, you can only email people if you get an opt-in. Well, that's correct. That's one method of consent. But with legitimate interest, if they visited you already, then you've got a reason to remarket to them, as long as your privacy policy is correct and your everything else. So I think that's why some people go on. Some people we're amazed when we still have conversations that they still are asking people to opt in and not using legitimate interest. So that could be another reason why in your survey results they were a bit skewed.
I think there's quite a bit of scaremongering out there a little bit with email marketing at the moment, because Apple they have updated their privacy settings a while ago, which means that effectively when you're looking at your email results, anything that's gone into an Apple mail will be marked as open, even if it's not. So effectively your open rates are a little bit pointless since that update. Yeah. So what's important to look at is your click-through rates, because then you know those people have opened it, and then how many have clicked through, which is why the UTM codes are particularly useful, because that helps with that. The other thing that Apple are doing at the moment is they're suggesting they're going to start the sort of promotions tab. I can't remember what their terminology is, like you have in your Gmail when you log on on your laptop, on your desktop, as opposed to on your phone. So that absolutely will affect email marketing. But what it will affect is email marketing that isn't tested, updated, optimized, and tried and best. So if you do just keep doing what you're doing, absolutely your email marketing you're going to lose on that.
So good email marketing is a worthwhile thing to do.
Absolutely. And it is about testing, because actually one of the things that we don't know yet, because it's not happened yet, but one of the things that might work is by make sure you're not sending from a no reply or a admin @ or an info @ send it from a person's email. That's less likely to be marked as spam or promotions. So all these things, as these updates come through, test. If suddenly you see a massive drop off in your click-through rate, something's happened. Try something different on the next go.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I think I imagine people are worried about whether email marketing is going to continue to work. And there probably will come a time when it doesn't. But at the moment, I think it's still an important part of the mix. Absolutely.
I think for life stage as well, it's worth taking it into account, because there's some real hard data that's come back, which suggests that the younger audiences are not using email marketing anymore. And I think that's quite true. I think that is, but is that life stage, or is that young people. And I think that will play out, because when people get into the office world, the world of work, they start using email a lot more and they become more familiar with it. So I don't know if it's life stage or if it's actually happening. We work with Tully's, and Tully's obviously run a lot of brands which are aimed at aimed at sort of the 20 to 30-year-old market. And
Indeed.
one of their biggest drivers is still email marketing. So I think as Liz said, measure, optimize, test, do all of that, and it should still deliver.
Good. Let's cut to the web. What are the problems with websites that you're seeing for regional attractions at the moment?
I think one of the things we see quite a bit is that people who look at their own website as them, not as their customer. So they'll look at their website on their laptop. Their customers are not looking at their website on their laptop. They will look at it as someone who already knows the product, and even if you think you're not, your unconsciousness does know. So, I mean, the average for a visitor attraction websites is that nearly 90% of your sessions are happening on a mobile. So if you are ever looking at your own website, please look at it on your mobile. It's so easy to go, oh, well, I'm on my laptop because I'm doing my admin work right now. And my admin work includes, I'm going to have a quick look at our website. If you are going to do it on your laptop, press F12, please. Because if you press F12 on your PC, you'll be able to look at it as a mobile. It won't be quite exactly what it is as a mobile, but it's a good go at it.
Yeah.
Not everyone knows about F12, so hopefully that helps a few people. But I think that is a real key thing that we do find, that some people tend to look at their own website not as a customer. So really think about it. If you are, say your key audience is a 35-year-old mother of two, one has a toddler and one is a school child, put yourself in that place, or ask, do you know someone? Are one of your friends that audience? Ask them to go through your website blind, and is your customer journey working? Do they immediately understand what you are? Can they quickly find out your opening times? Can they quickly find if you have parking? Can they quickly book? Is the push through to booking, which at the end of the day is the ultimate goal for pretty much everyone. Really think about it as your customer. And I think sometimes that's really difficult to do when you're so ingrained in your own attraction.
I can't stop myself grinning like a loon. You're talking about my life. This is the conversation I have over and over and over again. That user testing, that's one of the questions in the survey that always blows my mind, how few people do user testing and how few people do user testing on a mobile, and putting themselves into the shoes of their customers. I don't care if you like your website or not. I care whether your customers can do what they want to do. That's the only thing I care about. That's a bit untrue. I'm playing to the audience a little bit. But,
No, but it is so true. And I think there are, if you can't, there's ways you can look at it from a more sort of data perspective. If you're a data person, I know people are still getting their heads around GA4, and to be honest, so am I, even though I'm in it all the time because they change it every 5 minutes. And you have to build a lot of it yourself. But there are a lot of positives of GA4 as well. You can see relatively simply how many people are going from your homepage or your landing page or your event page, whichever page you want to look at. If you want them to go to your ticketing site, because most people use external platform ticketing sites, what percentage are landing on that page and going where you want them to go? Now, it will be a low percentage always, even if you've got a really good system, because they will want to find out more on different things. And in lots of ways you want them to. But actually, if you've got a return visit on your website, really, that's when they should be booking. They've had a look, they've found out where you are, they've talked to their friends on WhatsApp. Yes, that is one of the key options. Can they really quickly get to your booking site and book? Have a look at that data if you can. And if it's really, really low, maybe you haven't got the right call to action buttons on your page, or they're not as obvious as you think they are because maybe you're looking at it on a desktop rather than a mobile.
Amen. I
Good. Oh, I'm pleased because you're the number one expert in the website, so I'm glad you agree with me. But there's lots of things. There's lots of quick wins by just having a look.
So, right. Let's just very quickly touch on some of those then. So, what are the quick wins that people can do with their websites right now that is going to turn it into a lead generating machine for them?
What is your load speed? Are people bouncing off because you're not loading quickly? If it is low, do something about it. What are your call to actions? Are they obvious? Are they clear? Have you chosen one key call to action per page? Don't confuse your customer. Their attention span is really low. Does it show off what you want it to show off? Those are the top 3 things I would say look at.
The other thing I would probably add to that is look at your homepage. Make sure you're updating it regularly and giving those people the reasons to visit. I'm often quite surprised how they update the rest of the website, but then they don't update the homepage on what is coming and what's next, and what's on, and also what's on now. So I think, I would say look at the homepage. Think of the homepage as really a signpost page. Once they arrive there, they want to go. They've got to find something on there that's going to interest them, and so that would be my recommendation to add to that.
Good. So those are all great things to do once they hit your website, but you've got to get into the website in the first place. So let's talk about paid advertising, because that's something that you guys do a lot of, isn't it? And that's the thing that can drive reliable traffic to your website. So it's hugely important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I bet there's some real howlers that you see when you're first engaged by a client and you come and look at what they're doing in paid advertising. What are those real gotchas that you see?
Go on, it's like opening a... Go on, Liz, you can reveal some secrets of what people are doing.
This is the therapy session. This is a friendly, safe space. Just unburden yourselves.
Yes, we won't name any names, don't worry.
No.
Well, while we're talking about website, I think one of the things with paid advertising that people really they forget to think about or forget how important it is what web page are you sending that traffic to? Because absolutely, it might be your homepage if your homepage is the right page, but equally it probably isn't your homepage. It's probably it needs to relate to the ad you are placing. So I think sometimes it's the last thought. It's, we want to do an ad, do it. And then, I don't even think about where we're going to send it to the homepage. So I would say that's a really key thing that people sometimes forget. And actually, if you think about, again, always come back to what will the customer think. Would it annoy you if you clicked on an advert for red shoes and the ad opened a page for trousers? It would annoy you. So why would your customers not be annoyed if you click on an ad about summer and it opens a homepage and there's not a really quick call to action to get to that summer information? So again,
Absolutely.
Always think about the customer. The other thing that is incredibly important in our industry is your location. Who are you targeting location wise? And we have regularly taken on clients who have done it themselves or had previous agencies or whatever, doesn't matter where it happened. And they're targeting the whole of the UK. Maybe they're in Cornwall and they're targeting Scotland as well, for a term time visit.
Right.
Someone in Scotland is not going to drive 7 hours to come to you for a day out. Yeah. Look at where your customers come from. Map them if you can. Really find that you've got that data. If you're taking online booking, you have got the data of where the people live who come to you. Find out where those people live and use that information for where you're going to generate the best results for your targeting, for your adverts. I think that's incredibly important in this industry.
And I think it goes beyond just radius targeting.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, you really do need to map your audience to find out where they're coming from, because like road systems will change the layout of where people come from. Competitors will give some areas higher propensities to convert those visitors than others. So it really is worth investing in some mapping, geo-mapping tools and time to get it right.
I bet this is probably a how long's a piece of string quite type question, but broadly, is the paid advertising for attractions? There are search terms that people are going to be searching on, that you're going to want to sponsor, or you're going to be sponsoring things in social platforms. There are some spaces that are fantastically competitive and hugely expensive. I'm thinking car insurance. The cost per click of that is going to be phenomenal, but the return on investment for them is great. Yeah. Is this space a competitive and expensive space, or is it remarkably reasonably priced.
That really is a how long's a piece of string, I'm afraid.
Thought so.
When it comes to search, so if we're just going from a search perspective, so if you're using Google search ads, absolutely, it depends what the keyword you are using is how expensive that cost per click is going to be. And really, or you can help it by having an amazing ad, having an amazing landing page, and being really, really relevant, and your location targeting being right for that place. So you can be you can get yourself to the lowest in the range that's possible for that keyword, but you're never going to get a keyword that costs £2 to cost 10p. What you can do, and what I would always suggest you do, is use more longer tail keywords, which is the correct terminology, longer tail. But so if you're using, rather than maybe using day out, use day out in Yorkshire, family day out in Yorkshire. So you're extending the detail of it. And the more detail you have, the less competition there will be. Within Google, you can do some really good keyword planning and get an idea of what the type of cost will be for the type of keyword you're going for. And if we stick on the Google search point, actually, one of the other real howlers we regularly see is people actively targeting or not realizing they're actively targeting their own brand name. And therefore, and Google's algorithm, if you're doing a list of keywords you're going for, will always do what works best. So if you have either on purpose or accidentally put your brand name in there, all your budget's going to go on your brand name. Now, there are occasions when you might do that. If your SEO is terrible and you're coming up on page 3 for your brand name, go for your brand name. Absolutely do it in a separate campaign so you're spending only a certain amount of money. But in general, I'm yet to find a attraction that isn't coming up on the map, on the Google map, or on the top of the search results for their own brand name. So you are effectively paying Google for website visitors, clicks, conversions that you would have got for free. Don't do that. Completely. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
And we see that relatively regularly.
You differentiated between paid advertising for search and paid advertising in social platforms.
Yeah.
So we've got the tooling in Google to be able to estimate how much things cost. Go for those long tail search terms because they're probably going to be better value for you. Probably have better landing pages and be really clear. If you've got a nice long tail search, that person is looking for something very specific. So serve them a really specific landing page to arrive at on the other side that speaks to them, and they'll love it, won't they? They'll be much more likely to engage. Yeah. So you get that return on investment even further. What about in social? How are you planning out, what the cost is likely to be and where you should focus your energy?
So because we are doing this all the time, we have a good idea of so in social you want to look at the cost per 1,000 impressions, what's called the CPM, as opposed to the cost per click, because that's the bit in social that you can't affect. Meta, for example, are going to, if the cost per 1,000 for the target audience you are going for in the location you are going for is £4, it is £4. There's nothing you can do to change that. £4, it's £4. And unfortunately, it is, depending on where you are, for some people, it's lovely if their location's less, that's great. But if your location is more expensive, your location is more expensive. You've got to just deal with that, unfortunately. In the last few years, the cost per thousands have gone up around 12%. And they're estimating this year it will be around 4%. So to get the same number of impressions in 2025 that you got in 2024, you're going to need to spend 4% more. Wow. Unfortunately, it is what it is. I hate saying that, but it's true. We can try and lobby Meta all we like. The cost is what the cost is. It's a demand and supply thing.
Exactly.
But what you can do is be realistic. You are going to have to get the same number of impressions. You need to spend 4% more. However, if your budget has to remain the same, how can you improve your click-through rate? 0.2%. So although you'll get less impressions, you'll try and aim to get the same number of web visits and clicks from that. And then how can you then improve your conversion rate on your website? 0.2%. And therefore, you actually, for the same budget, you may get more conversions. So although you have to understand, as we all do, that costs of everything are going up and impressions are one of those things, actually, can you optimize and improve your ads? Because minimal improvements in your click-through rate, minimal improvements in your conversion rate on your website are going to result in more revenue at the end of the day for potentially the same budget or a minimal increase.
Of course. And what are those, again, this is such a sweeping broad question, but what are those things that people could do to improve the engagement in the ads themselves?
I'd say the number one thing to look at is your targeting correct?
Yeah.
Is your location targeting correct? Is your audience type targeting correct? Are you tailoring your ads to your audience? So if you're doing a target and you're targeting grandparents, for example, maybe your ad needs to be slightly different to if you're targeting the parents, or maybe your ad needs, and then your ad again will need to be, if you're remarketing and you're going to your sort of what we would call a hot audience, that needs a very different ad to a prospecting a cold audience. So really, really focus on your targeting and focus on speaking. Again, think about the customer. Who are you speaking to with that ad?
I think the other thing to mention and add to that is also the number of ads you're putting out. Because you never know exactly how your audience is going to react. So we actually do a lot of testing. We for a campaign, we would put a lot of ads out. And it could be marginal differences in an ad, because that's really what you want. So is it a bold heading? Is it not a bold heading? Is it use the word to save, or best prices, or and each of these will result in, say, that we're looking for that marginal gain, because over time all those marginal gains will add up on the creative and the messaging. Completely. and you'll get the best result, but it just takes its time, energy, and to get there.
Completely. Look, this has been really, really interesting, but I want to just leave people with 2 or 3 things that they ought to prioritise to get 2025 off to a great start, because last year was rubbish for so many people, wasn't it? So what can we all do to help get the show on the road for the attractions this year?
I'll take this, Liz, if that's all right. So I think I'll start anyway. You can add your 2 pennies worth. I think the key thing is giving that people a reason to visit. It's getting the programming right. What people should be doing is looking at the last 2 years, breaking down the visitor numbers throughout the year, ascertain where there's opportunity for growth. We know it's much easier to build those peaks during the school holidays, when people are actively looking. If you're not reaching capacity in those periods, that would be our build the peaks rather than the troughs. If, however, you've got to the stage where you think you're creaking a bit at the seams, and actually you want to build the term time campaigns, consider that as a secondary. But again, giving them that reason to visit now rather than waiting to a different time. And then once you've done that, you can plan your marketing budget around those opportunities. And if you know that you've got more capacity in the summer, give more budget to the summer. Or if you know you've got more capacity in the October half term, give more budget to the October half term. So it's all got to start of where you want to get those extra people from and to and where. And then as Liz mentioned later, postcode mapping, making sure that whatever advertising and marketing you're doing, you're hitting the people in the right areas who are going to have the biggest propensity to convert. And I've only got one other last thing to add. It's looking and learning from last year, looking back at the data points, look at your benchmarks, your email open rates, your landing pages, your digital advertising. Try and get that margin of 1% improvement. If you can improve all of your marketing just by 1%, that's a lot of 1%.
That's a lot of people, isn't it? At the end of the day,
absolutely.
Yeah. So that would be sort of my kind of what I would do. Liz, have you got anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that's all of it. I think, as I say, from the digital advertising side, postcode map if you can, and absolutely look back and then test based off that, and then test again, and then test again.
Well, there's some homework for everybody. We always finish with a book recommendation, and that book recommendation can be fiction or non-fiction. And I've got 2 guests, so there's got to be 2 books. So, Anita, what's your book recommendation for our listeners?
This was a really tough question, actually, because one of my New Year objectives is to read more. But I looked back and thought, okay, over the last over the last 5 years, what books have I read, and what's really resonated, and what still I feel I can remember, really. So the one, I think it's Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. I don't know how regularly it's mentioned on this podcast, but it's not a new book. But it all talks about how you've got two stories about two little mice and two people, and the two little mice go off and they find cheese in this maze every single day, whereas the two people found their cheese, they're happy with their cheese, they really like this certain cheese, why would they look elsewhere? And then that cheese, and then ultimately that cheese supply from the two people runs out, and it's talking about having to innovate and change to survive, and it's done in a really easy reading and fun way, and so yeah, I think, and that would be my recommendation to anybody.
Right, Liz, what about you? What's your recommendation?
Well, this was actually recommended to me because I thought about it. Okay, what have I been recommended that I've read? And actually, it was recommended by a member of my team, Miles. So this comes from him. It's Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who, I don't know whether you've read this book, but he was an FBI negotiator, and he has since written this book. And it's actually written in a really easy to take in way. I just found it really interesting and just started reading it and read it, basically, which I don't do nearly as much reading as I used to before I had a child. So if I managed to do that, it's a good one. But my key sort of takeaways from it was how, if you first think about negotiation skills, you probably think, well, what would I say? And actually, that's not what you should be thinking. It's what are they saying? Your key negotiation skills is actively listening. And if you're actively listening, then you can follow the other key skills, which are mirroring what they're saying, repeating the last of their 3 words, things like that. I just found it really interesting, and it has made me rethink how I engage with people. So I would recommend it as a good read.
You've got me thinking about what I was going to say now. Thinking about what were the last 3 words that you said. There's a patting your head and rubbing your tummy part to this.
Absolutely, that's the thing. I think
conversation and having it.
Exactly. I think that's what he says. He says, while you're having a conversation, there's 2 of you. You're half listening, but actually the majority of you is thinking about what you're going to say next. Yes. So if you're thinking about what you're going to say next, you are not listening. You're not listening. So you are not taking in what that person is saying in the way that you should be. And actually, if you can switch that bit off and really listen, what you say next will be the right thing. Wonderful. It's really hard. It's really hard to do, but I have actively tried to do that when I think about it.
It sounds a little bit like interviewing on the podcast, because this is a skill I've had to learn. This does not come naturally to me, and it felt like a hostage negotiation at the beginning, and it did feel a little bit like that. I had to negotiate my way out of the podcast episode, but with time and with practice, these things become easier, and you can focus on the conversation whilst you're figuring out where the conversation is going to go. But I've heard reviews of that book. I've not read it myself, so you've got me thinking I need to go and get
It's worth a read.
So, dear listeners, as always, if you would like a copy of either Anita or Liz's book recommendation, then the trendy thing to do is to go over to Blue Sky now, not Twitter. Who wants to go onto Twitter? It's full of megalomaniacs. So go over to Blue Sky and retweet the show message and say, I want Anita or Liz's book. And the first person to do that will get a copy sent to them. And I will be generous. It can be the first person for each book will get a copy.
Brilliant.
I'm not getting bankrupted this time with loads of book recommendations. I just want to leave people with one last thought. We know that benchmarking is important to you guys, and this is something you're going to be doing a lot over the next few months. So if people want to get involved with working on the benchmarking project for digital advertising that you guys are doing, what do they need to do?
They need to go to our website where there'll be more information about it, and that's agility-marketing.co.uk.
And hopefully it will be in the show notes as well. So you can jump over to the show notes and follow the link there. But agility-marketing.co.uk, and people will find all they need to know about the benchmarking that you're currently doing and how they can get involved in it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Ladies, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
thank you for having us.
We will catch up again soon. Thanks for listening to Skip the Queue. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others to find us. Skip the Queue is brought to you by Rubber Cheese, a digital agency that builds remarkable systems and websites for attractions that helps them to increase their visitor numbers. You can find show notes and transcripts from this episode and more over on our website, skipthequeue.fm.